to begin by asking Chief Simpson to give us a performance report on the police department, and then I'll have a couple of other comments.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Chief Simpson with the Police Department, and today we'll be talking about the Police Department CPR. I want to start out by saying, January of 12, the Police Department assumed responsibility for animal control, and next week, February 1st, I think that's next week, will assume control of the code enforcement piece in neighborhood services. So those two CPRs will operate on their own. Although they're going to be part of the police department, we will not be talking about those today. So strictly police department stuff. Certainly the mission of the police department is to work to reduce crime, certainly reduce the fear of crime, and enhance public safety. I want to start out by talking about our sworn officers. This is an authorized number of 451 that you see in a baseline area that has been consistent over the last 4 fiscal years. I agree with my boss, Ron Olson, in that that's just a number. The number that we actually are authorized each year is what we can budget. And that number, I believe, is somewhere around 443 or so. And so that's where we are for fiscal year 12 and 13. When you look at our non-sworn personnel, you can see a pretty good drop from 11 to 12. That drop is attributed to our school crossing guard program. If you remember, we greatly reduced that and had some volunteers come in and take care of that. And I'd like to report that has been going really, really well. So we hadn't experienced any problems, and I don't think that you guys have gotten any issues with school crossing guard. So we're pleased with that. The total expenditures, you see that $70 million figure, 71.5 fiscal year 12. 13, if you remember, we had about a $1.4 million expenditure for in-car video cameras, which is serving well for the district attorney with regard to evidence collection and the police department. One of the significant things, bless you, one of the significant things that I like to talk about is in the area of traffic citations. Keep in mind that number you see, the 48,000, is a different number than what we've actually seen by calendar year. This is a little difficult for the police department and fire department to keep kind of stats based on the fiscal year. We're going to follow the fire department's lead and start keeping our stuff with regard to the CPR on a calendar year basis, because that's how we track it better. And then you guys won't be confused with different numbers that you see floating somewhere else versus the fiscal year numbers. And so we'll change that. But that 48,000 number of citations issued is a significant thing for us, and it's aiding us in reducing traffic deaths on our roadways.
Okay, I guess before you get off of that, so
yes,
since you're going to be doing it per fiscal year from January 1 to December 31st,
correct.
So this is from January 1 of 12 to December 31st of 13?
This, what I'm reporting today, is August 1 through July 31, which was our fiscal year.
Okay.
And so what I'm saying, the next time I come to you with a CPR, it will be calendar year.
Okay.
And that way, published numbers will reflect the same numbers that we do on our CPR.
Thank you.
Okay. Much like the fire department does.
Sure.
I think when we keep our stats and measure things, is based on a calendar year.
Okay.
Okay. The next significant piece, and I won't insult you guys by reading this line by line, but the next significant piece to us is in the area of DWIRS. We have really been focusing hard on that, as you know. And again, we hadn't seen numbers like this since about 1993, and we think that by going after these drunk drivers, it's having a real impact in helping us save lives on the roadways. Our 911 calls, I think that's a significant issue to talk about, and it's what's happening in the city of Corpus Christi is consistent across the country, where you see 911 calls actually declining. And the reason for that is that there are so many different portals in how to access the police department. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, We've got a non-emergency line. We get complaints through city council and the city manager's office. And so there's so many other ways to access the police department other than 911 is a reason that across the country we're seeing declines in 911 calls to police. That doesn't mean that the workload is going anywhere. We're just getting it in a different way. That next line is our call response. I know Councilmember Scott and I had a conversation about this, but we are actually responding over 90% of the time to our 911 calls, the emergency calls, in our allotted time limit. That's 8 minutes and 22 seconds, which is also a national target that we look for.
Mayor, quick story. I was at a class, and the speaker is going on about how terrible the Corpus Christi Police Department is and how our call times are slower than the national average. And I just leaned back and get my phone out, and I text the chief, and I leaned forward. I said, well, sir, actually, we beat the national average. He goes, no, you got to be wrong. Where did you get that information? I went, oh, I got it from the police chief, you know. Booyah, you know.
Yeah, so rest assured.
One for the good guys.
Yeah, we get there within the allotted time frame, which is a really good thing. And then the next piece that I really want to key into, I don't know if I circled that right, but it's what I like, a stat that we've started to keep better. Man, this thing, my fingers are too big, man. That proactive patrol time, I think, is very important, and it's a new stat that we've started to keep. Where I would like to be is, if you take an officer's hour, 30 minutes of that responding to calls for service, and 30 minutes of that, I would like them to have proactive patrols that we can direct them to look for things that are important to the community. So far, we're able to squeeze out 23 minutes of proactive patrols, and we're going to be doing some things here in the future to try to squeeze more and get closer to that 30-30, which I think is our ultimate goal. And as we get there, there'll be some growing pains, but I think that 30-30 is where we want to be. That's perfection to me, that we can spend half of an hour proactively patrolling neighborhoods and then half of an hour on average responding to calls for service. When you look at our mission elements, responding to calls, we talked about that. We're hitting that above that 90% clip, which is our target. You look at how we investigate crimes, particularly UCR crimes. There are police chiefs around the country that would die for our homicide clearance rate because in 2012 we were at 100%. In 13 we're at about 94 or 95%. That's a credit to a fabulous community that gives us tips. Also officers, particularly detectives and investigators that know what they're doing, and they do it really, really well, as well as a strong patrol unit who actively go out working with our detectives, searching for these people. And one thing I'll say is I would hate to be a wanted person in the city of Corpus Christi, because I haven't seen a department that does it better, tracking down suspects, and they just do a really, really good job. And I'm not just saying that, they really do. And so I'm really proud of how they work together. When you look at the last thing I wanted to point out was, again, our safety record. There was a lot of talk about how we changed our response protocols to some of the calls that we do. And we saved about 15,000 man hours by doing things a little bit different. And where our win was that we refocused those man hours, and we've really accomplished some good things in the way of traffic enforcement, in that we're reducing the number of people who are losing their lives. So it was a tough call for us to do. It's still a tough call. I get asked about particularly minor accidents all the time. But when I point out, when we refocus and retool the department from within and gain everything we can with regard to efficiencies, the community on the whole wins. So I think we're on the right path and doing the right things. So if there's any questions, I'll certainly take them.
Thank you. I don't have any questions right now, but I see also Pat is here, who is part of your team, and
Yes,
I think you have a great team.
I do,
And
yes.
leadership, and also serving on the 911 and how we partner up with the county. I even saw some other information on here that was really helpful.
Yes.
So thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Olson?
Mayor, I wanted to mention the storm alert we had about a week ago for a couple of reasons. The storm, we had some advance warning for the storm. There was a planned activation of our Emergency Operations Center, which went very well. I think the whole notion of activating our Emergency Operations Center for what used to be considered relatively minor operations is really good for us. It not only allows us to practice that essential service, but it helps us get better prepared on things that we're doing, if it be a community event or a storm or whatever it is. So I think that went really well. I wanted to commend our fire department, our emergency operations people, excuse me, our police department. All of them coordinated really well with TxDOT. There were a couple of state highways that were closed during that storm event. And while it's always a disruption to have a closed road, I think it was completely minimized by the advanced planning of the Emergency Operations Center, the pre-placement of barricades, and the cooperation of our people there to, keep a really close eye on the roads. And I wanted to mention this because several years ago there was an event that turned somewhat chaotic for the city, and there was an after-action report done on that event, which means you look at what went wrong, you try to learn from what went wrong, and you try to fix it for the next time. And that process, I think, while it was pretty invisible to people, it worked because trust me, as maybe what looked like a pretty minor event last week could have been somewhat chaotic, much more chaotic than it was. So there was a lot of work, there was a lot of cooperation, and there were the application of lessons learned. And I just didn't want that to pass the council like, oh, no big deal, it just happened. No, it didn't just happen. We had people that actually worked on it and did a good job on it. The other thing I wanted to mention, I just passed out to the council my 1,000-day report. I know it's a little unique, but I work in 100-day increments. I do that so that I can maintain a sharp focus on the priorities, maintain a sense of urgency on the things we're working on. And yesterday, January 27th, I completed the 10th 100-day increment. So I've given you a report. I don't need to talk too much about what's in there. I think we've talked recently about some of those things. And I just wanted to give you a summary of what the past 1,000 days has been like in terms of the internal operations of the city, the things that we've worked on, the progress that we've made. And the last paragraph gives you kind of an idea of, again, as we look at the internal operations and trying to improve the internal operations, where I'm going to be placing my next priorities of emphasis. And that is going to be primarily taking the things that we've started and continuing to work on them to make sure that they are perfected, that they're actually being used, that they're working better, that they get better as time goes on, and then we'll add a few more things to it that I think will round out the service. I do think that when you look at the operations of the city, and this is mostly from the inside looking at it, I think that there have been some dramatic changes and some dramatic improvements over the past 1,000 days. And I'm very proud of the organization and the things that have been accomplished and done here by a very engaged team. And I need to recognize that. I need to recognize to you the excuse me, the tremendous work that has been done by all of the staff, especially the management team, but throughout the entire organization. People have been engaged in thinking about their work in a different way. They've been looking for ways to improve, and that's starting to, at first that was a very slow process, and that is starting to speed up now. And I'm very proud of the way they do that. I also wanted to mention, the City Council. The City Council support is key to this because over the past 1,000 days, you all have empowered me. You've given me the resources. I was telling somebody today or yesterday, there's virtually not been anything that I've asked for from the City Council that I haven't gotten in terms of support and resources. Now, I am very careful about what I ask for, but still, the truth is, you've given me everything I've needed and everything I've asked for. And without that, this work couldn't progress either. So I'm appreciative of that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.